At the heart of the criticism of English football is the lack of a single controlling body. The Football Association, represents it at international level. The Football League represents the interests of the 92 professional clubs in 4 divisions. The response of both organisations to the crises of recent years has led to the accusation that they have failed to give a lead to the game and to its supporters. The climax to a season of discontent came at Newcastle's last home game, with a mass protest by angry and embittered fans. This demonstration was provoked by the team's relegation, but it's underpinned by a whole list of grievances. And in the absence of a lead from the FA or League, it's the club's board which takes the blame. It's not concern over safety which infuriates the supporters. It's the club's attitude to the fans on the terraces. The expensive new roof does not extend to cover the fans who stand. The toilets on the terraces are, the club admits, a disgrace. But the board say it would cost £200,000 to improve them. And if they act before the recommendations of the Taylor report are known, the money, they say, might be wasted.
The toilets every match, they seem to overflow. They don't seem to realise that if you spend a little bit of money treating people better, then they will act better. And if you move on to the Gallagher end, which is the main stand area at Newcastle, I think that the toilets have to be seen to be believed. If they've been updated since the 1930s, I'd be very surprised.
We've got a new Milburn stand, which the chairman says is great facilities for the fans, but I mean, what fans does he mean? 300, I can call the executive boxes, the pre-match meal, etc. What about sort of every Tom, Dick and Harry who stands week after week in the Gallagher end, just even in the benches in the front end of the seats in both stands, and it still gets wet. It's a disgrace, really.
You've got a situation here where we're in the top 6 crowds in the country, and we've got a second division stadium, we've got a 4th division team, and a non-league set up in the director's room. Yeah, it's just not good enough.
Right, as you all well know, it should know, it's Newcastle v Millwall.
What has changed since the 30s is the police presence. A reminder that hooliganism has diverted resources that could have been spent on the ground.
Information coming in would suggest that there could be some form of demonstration before, during, or after the match on TV and all 3 times.
But today, the fans are being checked for weapons, not in case they fight each other, but in case they can't suppress their anger at the men who run the club. There have even been death threats against the chairman. The pitch invasions are protests against the board. The signs, unintentional irony. The fans believe their club is not worthy of support. Do you accept that standards for spectators at your ground are now unacceptable?
I certainly don't accept that they should continue as they are, and we're continually trying to improve those standards.
Isn't this an extraordinary atmosphere to run what is supposed to be a sport in?
Oh, of course it is. And the general public, or many members of the general public, don't, I think, appreciate that one does it for nothing. That I get no salary, I get no director's fees, I don't get any hidden perks or inflated expenses. I do it for the good of the club. But the real battle for Newcastle United is being fought far from the terraces. This mansion was built for the Marquis of Londonderry. It's now owned by John Hall, the most upwardly mobile miner's son in history. He built Newcastle's Metro Centre, Europe's largest shopping complex. Now he's leading a campaign to take control of the city's football club. Newcastle United was set up a century ago, with 2,000 shares, then worth 50p each. So far, the Magpie Group, as they call themselves, are estimated to have spent £2 million buying the rights to a third of the shares from local families who've inherited them. John Hall says it's a crusade for the ordinary fan.
The ordinary man in the street, the ordinary supporter, the customer.
has to think something else. I've got to stand up and be counted and say, your service is not good enough. Well, I'm not going to come, but it's not happening fast enough.
He says it's part of a Thatcherite revolution.
I think that change has to come. It's inevitable. It's happening everywhere, change. It's happening in the economy, in the professions, and soccer's no different. There's still, I believe, a 19th century attitude towards the game by many, many people, and I think that if they don't recognize what's happening, the changes taking place in the world, and it's a global village in everything, and if they don't recognize this, then in a sense they either have to set aside or be pushed aside.
If I believed that Mr. Hall was going to be good in the long term for Newcastle United, I'm all for football if it comes to that, then I would have been speaking to him a long time ago, because I could do without this hassle.
From the terraces, this battle between old money and new may seem remote. But as the fans know, the real power in football lies in the boardroom. And when power is so heavily fought over, it is not lightly given away. This is the heart of football's problem. Most league clubs are owned by established family shareholders or have been bought by powerful businessmen. Few are keen to share their power with others.
They know how to run their own club, their own businesses, and make a hell of a success at it. And therefore they think they know how to run everything else. You know, because they've made a success in their own business and personal lives, and still got 92 people like that.
Does that mean that they're the ideal people to run football?
Of course they're not really. That's the last thing they are.
Professional football is run from this house in Luton, St Anne's.
Football League.
It's the headquarters of the Football League. The 92 club chairmen elect a management committee from their own ranks to run the league. But since its foundation over a century ago, the chairmen have been unwilling to delegate their management committee any real authority. Today, the league says it would like to give the fans more say in running football, but it claims it has no power to do so.
The Football League can do nothing about that.
Why not?
Because to get a regulation through to say fans must be had regard to involves a two-thirds majority, and too many clubs would not want a dictatorial power making them listen to fans without knowing in advance what the fans are going to talk about. We would never get it through.
Isn't that a classic example of a failure of leadership?
It could well be a failure of leadership, but you've got to bear in mind our structure is such that it's no use someone just leading unless you can persuade two-thirds of the club to follow it. We've had our structure for 100 years. There are 92 separate legal bodies, and you cannot force them to do anything which is not already in the rule book.
The league recently commissioned consultants to attend the management committee meeting. Panorama has obtained their report. The consultants found confusion, a lack of clarity on what had been agreed. Important topics had been overlooked. Anti-hooliganism was addressed only very briefly. We would expect the management committee to take every opportunity to be seen to be taking a clear lead. Overall, they found the meeting was not one of a board devoted to planning and policy setting.
I was always frustrated by a lack of urgency and a realisation of the need to grip the problem there and then. I mean, for example, we'd sit round a conference table in one of the government conference rooms with the government representatives and the representatives of the football authorities, and it would be agreed that the Football League would go back to the 92 chairmen to consult on some particular idea, and they would go away having agreed that they would do it. Then perhaps a week or 2 weeks later I'd ask my officials, well, what's happening with the Football League consultation, and they would come back, the Football League having said that there was a problem over putting the questionnaire together or the particular sort of question, or they hadn't been able to get it out instantly to the 92 chairmen. And there was always, it seemed to me, a problem of delay, most frustrating, and it really makes one feel desperate. There was no willingness to tackle the problems of the day.
In theory, there's one body which could take on the powerful barons of the league, the Football Association. The FA is the game's supreme authority. It runs the English teams. Wembley is its spiritual home. In theory, the FA and league work in harmony, but in practice, they have a radically different character.
In essence, the Football League represents the emergence of the game of football from its working class origins, from the back entries of Lancashire and Glasgow and indeed Sheffield. The FA represents the emergence of the game in rather posher quarters, from the public schools, from the young gentlemen who like to play it, from the game of rugby without holding the ball, as it were. And I think still those differences are reflected in the two organisations.
The Football Association's ruling council meets 6 times a year at Lancaster Gate in London. It also has 92 members, each of whom has 1 vote. There's a chairman, a vice-chairman, 6 vice-presidents, 10 life vice-presidents, men who can stay in the council indefinitely, 10 divisional representatives, 4 representatives of the Commonwealth, 7 representatives of the Professional Football League, and 53 association representatives, the vast majority of whom come from individual county associations. On the Duke of Norfolk's estate in Arundel, the County Football Association in Sussex are holding their cup final. John Davey is their representative on the FA ruling council. It's men like Mr. Davey who form the majority on football's ruling body. They represent not the big league clubs, but the amateur game, the rural heart of English soccer. In Sussex, up to 15,000 people play in matches like this. Its county association represents over 800 clubs. For Mr. Davey, the amateur game is football. No terraces, no hooligans, and minimal confrontation on the pitch. In Sussex, they insist the amateurs should have more seats on soccer's ruling council than the professionals of the Football League.
The ruling body is for all football. The ruling body isn't just for the Football League. The ruling body is for all football.
But most of football is a big club. Why should you be in a position to govern the big clubs, the Football League?
Most of football is not the big clubs. Most of the football is outside the Football League. There's football all over the country.
What can you bring, though, to the management of football that the professionals can't?
I'm not saying I can bring anything that the professionals can't, but I can bring experience of 30 years administration in county football.
The winners agree with Mr. Davey. He runs Sussex with efficiency, and in the FA, he's a relative youngster. But they believe some of the men elected to the game's ruling council have too much experience.
It's a young man's sport, and I think, we've got to get young people involved, even in the administrative side.
Some people say the people who the counties elect are too old, too conservative, for the good of the
Well, I
game.
do know some of them, and I might have to say that you're right on that, yeah.
It's a hell of a job to run a county. So the people who spend time in doing it, they are the people who are likely to be elected by the counties to the Football Association. And they come up yearly, and some of them are getting very old. But they are all people who have spent their life in football. They haven't suddenly got there. They haven't bought their way in. They haven't got there because they were someone prominent in industry or society. They've got there because they come up right from the grassroots.
The FA's full-time chief executive is Graham Kelly. It's his job to run Saturday's Cup final. He must also defend his ruling council against the charge that many are aging gentlemen amateurs, ill-equipped to govern the professional game.
Should the professionals in the Football League be governed by the amateurs of the Football Association?
Well, the professionals in the Football League are not, in fact, governed solely by the amateurs of the Football Association. The FA Council is a very broad parliament representing the interests of everybody involved in the game.
But can the amateurs govern the professionals?
It's not a case of the amateurs governing the professionals. The professionals are well represented on the Council of the Football Association. It is a democratic organisation, and it works particularly well, in my view.
But the amateurs are in the majority.
I would say that if you put it as starkly as that, yes, the amateurs are in the majority, but on any issue affecting the professional game, I would say that in the individual discussions, the professionals are in the majority, and that's probably the way it should be.
But some club chairmen believe the FA is shirking its true responsibilities.
Aren't these the men with experience?
interference to do nothing, yes.
Aren't they the men often with the true interests of the game at heart?
If they are, why haven't they resigned over Hillsborough and Bradford? Failure to do anything over hooliganism. Failure to update the facilities. What are they doing?
What do you make of them yourself? You've had dealings with them. How do you assess them?
Decent enough people, but they wouldn't trust them to run a wealth shop.
Doesn't the game now need a stronger lead than can be given by the Football Association in its present form?
Well, I think when you talk about giving the lead, one can express opinions and one can bring issues into the open, into debate. But at the end of the day, it's the people who are involved in the decisions, it's the football club chairman themselves who have to make the decisions, and it's they who have to face up to the responsibility of doing so.
This Saturday, over 200 people were arrested at football matches across the country. As the men in charge of football argue over responsibility for its problems, the season has ended with yet another outbreak of hooliganism. It has been repeated scenes like these which led the government to intervene. 4 years ago, Mrs. Thatcher pressurized the football authorities to put their house in order.
I'm very pleased with the decision the Football Association has made.
After the Heysel disaster, she held a critical meeting with the Football Association and the League at Downing Street. It may have been a meeting, but it was not a meeting of minds. The men who run football believe the government was intervening in a game it doesn't understand. The government believed the FA and the Football League were proving incapable of decisive action. Hooliganism was the issue which provoked the government into imposing its will on the game with a compulsory national membership scheme. Now, after Hillsborough, the government seems certain to widen its control over the way football treats its fans still further. Impatient and often privately contemptuous of football's leadership, the government has turned to the one league chairman who is a Tory MP. The chairman of Luton Town, David Evans, has used hooliganism as a spur for an open assault on the way football is run. His views are widely said to be echoed in Downing Street. What do you make of the Football League, the quality of the leadership? How would you describe it?
0 out of 10.
0 out of 10?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of what's happened to the game. Lost half its spectators, half its number of playing professionals, half the number of the people in the game. We haven't won the World Cup since '66. We're not in Europe. We've just had 95 people killed at Hillsborough, 300 since the war.
Can you blame the Football League?
Of course, they're running it.
Can you blame the Football League?
Yes, of course, blame the Football League management committee, sure. I take responsibility at Luton. They put themselves in management positions. They failed the game lamentably. You've only got to look at the game. It's sick, it's dying. Whose fault is that?
He's the only Conservative member of Parliament who's connected with a football club. And therefore the Prime Minister, not unnaturally, takes the view that he must know something about it. Otherwise he wouldn't be chairman of a First Division club.
Is the Prime Minister right?
Well, if she obviously believes that she's right, we believe that she's made a misjudgment in this case.
Is she perhaps taking notice of David Evans because she doesn't respect the rest of you?
Oh, very, very, most certainly so. Most certainly.
Is that your own fault?
We can only present the facts as they are from our experience. Mr. Evans has only been a director of a football club for a few years. He's only been chairman for 2 years. We don't think that his experience and knowledge matches up to the experience of every other chairman and of the management committee combined. We think that he is the man that's out of step. We are in step.
But David Evans is in step with the government. And he brings with him a vision of football which Mrs. Thatcher says is an example to be followed. It is a vision of locking the hooligans out and returning football to its rightful fans. Luton is the first British club to introduce a compulsory membership scheme. It has succeeded in making each Luton match an occasion for the family.
I think the Luton scheme has been a marvellous success. The supporters now can come and watch football in a sensible family atmosphere, and I think equally important, the people of Luton can carry out their normal day-to-day life on a Saturday without the threat of themselves or their property being damaged by a certain element of people coming to the town.
But coming to Luton today are 4 Derby fans. Their experience will prove less reassuring. Luton's membership scheme is intended to prevent hooliganism by locking out away supporters. But these men are not hooligans, they're fans intent on watching every match. In Luton, they meet a Derby supporter who lives nearby. He has a membership card and can buy them guest tickets.
How's it going, mate? How's it going? Nice to meet you. Have you got those tickets? Well, I've only got 4. Yeah. Right, you know, we'll have to get one later, but that's no problem. Yeah.
But somehow, they have aroused the suspicion of the police. Outside the ground, they're stopped twice.
You're going to vouch for them?
Yeah.
You're going to be taking them into the ground and remaining with them the whole time?
I've got tickets that say they're my bona fide guests.
You're going to be with them the whole time?
I'm going to be with them the whole time. I'm not making. It's all right. Is that all right? You know, all right.
Both sides are within their rights. But for the Derby fans, their afternoon has turned sour.
We just stopped us in the street, checked the membership card, phoned it through to obviously the club to see whether it was valid or not, and to see whether the membership was actually from Luton. And it's totally wrong. I mean, we're coming out for a day on a Saturday and keep getting stopped by the police. I mean, you're made to feel villains even though you're not. I mean, what do you do? It's totally wrong, but you know, it just seems to be a way of life with football.
Eventually, all 5 Derby fans find their way inside. They claim to recognise another 100 Derby supporters. But it's too few to create any sense of atmosphere. Even some Luton supporters want the away fans back.
I was for the membership scheme and the plastic pitch actually, but you know, now 3 years has passed. I find that I still think there ought to be changes in the club's policies by letting the away fans back into the ground in small organised numbers.
Why?
Why? Because I think it create a bit more atmosphere.
I mean, I've been to games and looking across at 2 groups of supporters. They're facing one another, chanting obscenities and not watching what's happening on the field. So if that is lack of atmosphere, I think we can well do without it.
Under the government's membership scheme, away fans would be allowed in. But a foolproof identity scheme could cost the clubs £40 million. The league fear this might bankrupt smaller clubs and frighten many fans away.
There are some members of society that are so used to carrying identity cards and credit cards, they won't care. But this, as you said a moment ago, means you'll have a different type of person going to the ground. The sort of man that's suspicious of government and police computers may stop going, although he's got nothing to fear really, but he may think he has. The sort of person that always carries identity cards and credit cards will just go in. This means there's a difference in the balance of the spectator.
The Prime Minister, I happen to believe, has got it absolutely right that the 56 million people who don't go to football matches should not be inconvenienced by the 450,000 per week that do. And the violence and hostility at those games, we're a party of law and order, we should put the matter right, and we're going to. Football had their chance.
If the government's membership scheme does go ahead, football must pick up the bill at a time when its resources are strained to the limit. If the league is to survive in its present form, with all its 92 clubs intact, football must respond with a vision of its own.
The £20,000 prize for the community club of the 3rd Division goes to Preston North End.
One such vision is Preston North End. This month, they were co-winners of the Community Club of the Year award, collected by former England star Tom Finney, under the approving gaze of the league. Preston is returning football not just to the fans, but to the whole community. If all 92 clubs are to survive, this may be how it's done. 7 days a week, Preston hires out its ground to amateurs and local schools. Their president believes it will help Preston meet the cost of government proposals while increasing attendances.
The message is that we can look at the ground today and see the number of youngsters that is a ground. It is a community-based game, is football, and always has been, right from my day, where the community are involved in this. Is a national game, and all said and done. And when we look today and see on this pitch, we're not only watching youngsters playing football and training, we're also watching girls playing hockey. And so the message is that it is a community-based game, and I would say we've got to look at Preston as an example, and it has been a huge success here.
1 and 9, 19.
For Preston, it's football's roots in the community which keep it alive. In the bar, not just footballers, but a bingo club.
That's better if you've got the leg. Oh, yeah.
If the community can't come in, the club go to them. Today, they're helping the partially sighted.
It's lovely. You know, it's nice to see even the old age pensioners come up, and, like, when the weather's nice, they take them up to the lake, or they take them to Blackpool, or if it's raining, they have a little dance, a game of bingo, and they still enjoy it.
Do you think that the community football policy has affected crowd behaviour at all, safety?
Yes, without a doubt. You walk around our ground, there's no Kilroy was here or whatever. They don't do any damage whatsoever because they think it's part of their house. They don't damage their own houses.
Preston keeps alive the traditional view of the local club with loyal supporters in the heart of town. But for the big clubs like Tottenham Hotspur, football is increasingly a business, part of a modern leisure industry. Spurs is now a publicly quoted company. Football is just 40% of its turnover. It owns a textile company and the Hummel sportswear franchise. It is a starkly commercial view of the world in which the game's economics will force change on the football establishment.
Can I have it, sir?
And in which all 92 clubs of the league are unlikely to survive.
Economics, obviously, in far as everything, will dictate which way the industry goes. But what I would say to you is that football cannot afford to continually lose money, because eventually companies that continue to lose money eventually go broke. I think it's a possibility, a strong possibility, that a number of clubs will go to the wall over the next 5 to 10 years.
But the new economics of football may also affect the fans. Spurs have now replaced standing room for 3,000 with sponsored boxes for more profitable executive spectators.
Okay, let me please allow to show you some of the facilities we've got here at Tottenham. Of course, we've got the girl here looking after us all day long, serving the meal. We've got the crowd control here that we can actually bring the volume so that we feel as if we're part of the terraces, actually. We've got the TV set that we use for the action replays after every goal. We swing the seats round, and yes, we can view the goal here. After that, we've got the other facility of the lunch, that we have a superb lunch, a lovely four-course lunch. Enjoy the beer and the wine. But of course, due to the regulations, we have to stop serving the beer 15 minutes prior to the kick-off. We've got coffee, which is available all afternoon. Then we move out to the front here, and we've got the superb viewing facilities of actually seeing the game here and feeling as if you're part of the actual territory.
But White Hart Lane is a controversial model for the future. Some feel it would change the nature of the game.
The commercial option that Spurs have adopted is not of its own nature something which we would push aside. It depends how it works for the people who love the game. If what they are offering us is to box the game inside one big executive area, then I feel it's rather like driving around India in a Mercedes, where one can wind the window down a little bit to let some of the smell through. That if that's what they want to do to the game, then the game will die, because all the value which the game has is given by the spectators.
If we were not to have 36 executive boxes at this ground, we would have to increase our standing average gate by 15,000 every single game to give us the income to compensate for the 36 boxes.
Many people believe that the real fans are the ones on the terraces. They're the ones who give its game the real value. And the more boxes you build, the more likely the game is to die on its feet.
I think there's a slight fallacy. I think that the real supporters, those that actually support the game, week in, week out. Doesn't matter if they stand or if they sit. There are many seated season ticket holders that have attended their football clubs for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're every much a supporter as the person who stands on the terraces and endures, perhaps, in certain instances, very poor facilities.
Like every club, Spurs observed a minute's silence in tribute to those who died on the terraces of Hillsborough. It was an uncanny reminder of the power of the spectators, tangible even in silence, to create the atmosphere which makes football our national game. But if professional football is to survive in its present form, its leadership must prove that Hillsborough is not a symbol of a game locked into irreversible decline.
The leadership of football over the years are the very people that have brought about, are responsible indirectly for the disaster and every disaster that has befallen British football. They failed to deal with the hooligan when he was still dealable. They failed to provide money to update and modernize the facilities. They're the people who have the power. They've not used it.
The disasters are small in number, which is not to say that they shouldn't have occurred, but we have disasters throughout life. I mean, and most people that I know have a motor car, and we know that there are thousands, tens of thousands of motor car accidents. If we could eliminate, we would. Equally within grounds, if we could eliminate the trouble, we would do so. We do our best. The number of incidents, although there are still too many, are minimal compared to the total number of attendances.
At Anfield, the fencing has come down. Soon they'll put in seating on the Kop. Football may now face a safer future. But it's a future over which the football authorities have increasingly little say.